I woke up that Tuesday morning in February to find 30 dump truck loads of snow piled 15 feet high across my commercial agricultural field. And I knew exactly who had done it. The massive white wall stretched 100 yards along my property line, blocking access to half my acreage where I was supposed to start spring planting prep in just a few weeks. My name is Zachary Lawson, and I had been farming this land in rural Wisconsin, just outside Madison, for the past 8 years. The field in question was a prime 40 acres I leased specifically for organic vegetables, and now it looked like someone had relocated a small mountain range onto it. I stood there in my work boots, breath fogging in the cold morning air, staring at the catastrophe before me. The snow was not the fluffy white stuff from a fresh snowfall. This was compressed, dirty, road-salted, gravel-mixed industrial waste that their plows had scraped up from the Meadowbrook Heights HOA development next door. I could see chunks of asphalt, cigarette butts, fast food wrappers, and God knows what else mixed into the frozen mass. My phone rang. It was my business partner, Tony, calling about our spring contracts. "Hey, Zach, just confirming we are still on schedule for the March prep work," he said, his voice chipper and optimistic. "We have a problem," I told him, still staring at the white monstrosity. "A big problem." I explained the situation while walking the length of the dumped snow. The tracks were clear as day. Multiple large plow trucks had deliberately driven onto my property, crossed a good 50 feet past the property line, and systematically unloaded their snow in organized rows. This was not an accident. This was not overflow. This was intentional dumping. Tony was silent for a moment. "That's got to be illegal. You need to call someone." "I will," I said, "but first I need to document everything." I spent the next 2 hours taking photographs and videos from every angle. I used my drone to get aerial footage, which clearly showed the plow tracks leading from the HOA's streets directly onto my field. The GPS coordinates were automatically embedded in the metadata. I photographed the debris mixed into the snow. I took close-ups of the tire tracks. I measured the distance from my property line to where the dumping started. Everything was documented with timestamps and location data. Then, I drove to the Meadowbrook Heights HOA office, a small building at the entrance of their development. The place was exactly what you would expect: manicured lawn, decorative fountain that was not running due to winter, and a bronze plaque listing all the board members. The president's name jumped out at me: Patricia Hendricks. Inside, a young receptionist looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with Patricia Hendricks immediately," I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger simmering underneath. "You have an appointment?" "No, but I think she will want to see me." "I am Zachary Lawson, and I own the agricultural property adjacent to this development. Someone dumped about 30 truckloads of snow onto my commercial farmland, and the tire tracks lead directly from your streets." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. "Let me see if she is available." She disappeared through a door, and I heard muffled voices. A moment later, she returned and gestured for me to follow. Patricia Hendricks was exactly what I had expected. She was probably in her mid-50s, with an expensive haircut that looked like it required a lot of hairspray to maintain its perfect shape. She wore a cream-colored blazer over a silk blouse, and her office was decorated with motivational posters about community standards and property values. She did not stand up when I entered, which I took as a deliberate power move. "Mr. Lawson," she said, her voice sugary sweet but with an edge underneath. "What seems to be the problem?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos. "Your snow removal company dumped all of your development's snow onto my commercial farmland. That's the problem." She barely glanced at the photos. I am sure you are mistaken. Our contracted snow removal service would never do something like that. The tire tracks lead directly from your streets to my property, I said, my patience already wearing thin. I have drone footage, GPS coordinates, timestamps. This is not a mistake. Patricia leaned back in her chair, and her expression shifted from fake friendliness to barely concealed hostility. Mr. Lawson, I think you need to understand something. Meadowbrook Heights is a premier residential community. We have standards to maintain. Our residents expect clear streets and safe conditions. Now, if some snow happened to blow over onto that empty field of yours, I do not see what the big deal is. Empty field. I felt my jaw clench. That's a commercial agricultural operation. I have contracts for spring planting that start in 4 weeks. That snow is mixed with road salt, gravel, and trash that will contaminate my organic certification. And it did not blow over. Your contractors deliberately drove onto my property and dumped it there. Do you have proof it was our contractor? She asked, examining her manicured nails. Yes, actually. The truck tire patterns match commercial snow plows, and I can see your development's name on some of the debris mixed into the snow. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. Even if that were true, which I am not admitting, where else are we supposed to put it? We got 3 feet of snow in the last week. Our retention ponds are full. The parking areas are maxed out. Your field was the most logical solution. It's not your property, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You cannot just dump your snow wherever you want. There are designated snow dump sites. The county has 3 of them. Those cost money, Patricia said flatly. Why should our HOA fees go toward expensive dumping when there is perfectly good empty space right next door? Because it is not your space, I repeated slowly. It is theft of services, trespassing, illegal dumping, and destruction of commercial property. You have cost me tens of thousands of dollars in damages and lost contracts. Patricia stood up, her face flushing red. Are you threatening to sue this HOA? Because I should tell you, Mr. Lawson, we have lawyers on retainer. Good lawyers, very expensive lawyers, and they will bury you in paperwork for years. Is that really what you want? I looked at her for a long moment, feeling my anger crystallize into cold determination. I want the snow removed from my property immediately, and I want compensation for the damages. That's not going to happen, Patricia said. Now, I have a very busy schedule, so if you will excuse me. This is not over, I told her. I think it is, she replied, sitting back down and turning to her computer. See yourself out. I left the office, got in my truck, and sat there for a minute, hands gripping the steering wheel. I called my lawyer, a guy named Marcus, who I had used for contract work in the past. Marcus, I need your help with something, I said, and explained the situation. He listened quietly, then said, Okay, first thing we need to do is send them a formal demand letter. Certified mail, return receipt. Give them 7 days to remove the snow and begin negotiations for damages. If they refuse, we file an emergency injunction for destruction of commercial property. How long will that take? If we can get in front of a judge quickly, maybe a week for a hearing. But Zach, even if you win the injunction, getting them to actually remove the snow could take weeks or months. Courts move slowly. I thought about my spring planting deadlines, my contracts with 3 different restaurant groups and 2 farmers markets. I thought about the money I had already invested in seeds, equipment, and labor. Then I thought about Patricia Hendricks's smug face telling me her lawyers would bury me. Send the demand letter, I told Marcus, but I am going to take care of the snow problem myself. What do you mean? Marcus asked, his voice cautious. I mean I am going to return their snow to them. Zach, do not do anything stupid. "I am not," I assured him. "I am just going to put their snow back where it belongs, on their property." I hung up and made another call, this time to a guy named Rick who ran a trucking company out of Janesville. We had done business before when I needed bulk deliveries of compost and soil amendments. "Rick, I need to hire every dump truck you have available," I said. "How many loads are we talking?" 30, maybe 40. "I need to move about 1,000 cubic yards of snow." "Snow?" Rick sounded confused. "Long story. Can you do it?" "Sure, but it will cost you. Dump trucks are not cheap, and if you need them all at once, I will have to pull guys off other jobs." "How much?" He thought for a moment. "For that many loads, coordinating multiple trucks, priority service." "I would say 15,000. I winced. That was a big chunk of money, but losing my spring planting contracts would cost me over 100,000. "Deal. How soon can you start?" "Day after tomorrow. I need time to coordinate the drivers and equipment." "Perfect. I will send you the details." Next, I called the county land use office and asked to speak with someone about property boundaries. A helpful clerk named Susan pulled up the plat maps for my property in Meadowbrook Heights. "Everything looks in order on your property lines," she said. "Why do you ask?" I explained about the snow dumping. "Oh, that's definitely illegal," Susan said immediately. "They would need permits for snow relocation, and those are only granted for designated dump sites. You should file a complaint with the county." "I plan to," I said. "But I want to make sure I understand something. If someone dumps something on my property illegally, I have the right to return it to them, correct?" There was a pause. "Well, technically, you would need to follow proper procedures for disposal. But if I know exactly where it came from and I return it to the source," another pause. "I think you should talk to a lawyer about that." "I have. Thanks for your help, Susan." I spent the rest of that day and all of the next day planning. I studied the layout of Meadowbrook Heights, looking at Google Earth satellite images and street views. The development had 4 entrances, a clubhouse with a large parking lot, 3 retention ponds, and numerous open common areas. Every street was exactly the same: curved roads with identical houses, small yards, and plenty of HOA mandated landscaping. The demand letter from Marcus arrived at the HOA office via certified mail on Wednesday morning. I knew because I had it tracked. According to the receipt, Patricia Hendricks signed for it personally at 9:15 in the morning. By Wednesday afternoon, I had received no response. Thursday morning, Rick's dump trucks started arriving at my property at 6 in the morning. He had brought 12 trucks total, with drivers ready to work in shifts. We had a brief meeting where I explained exactly what we were doing. "We are moving all this snow from my field to various locations within the Meadowbrook Heights development," I said. "I have identified the GPS coordinates for each dump location. We will be placing the snow on HOA common areas, not on individual homeowner properties. I do not want any resident's personal property to be affected." One of the drivers, a guy in his 40s named Pete, grinned. "This is going to make some people mad." "They made me mad first," I replied. "Now let us get to work." The operation was beautiful in its simplicity. The dump trucks would drive onto my field, load up with snow using a rented excavator, drive the 5-minute trip to Meadowbrook Heights, and dump the load in a designated common area. Then they would return for the next load. I rode along in the first truck to make sure everything went smoothly. We entered through the main gate, which was not actually gated despite the name. The streets were pristine, cleared down to bare asphalt. Someone had done an excellent job with the snow removal. Unfortunately for them, all that snow had to go somewhere, and they had chosen my property. We drove to the clubhouse parking lot, a massive expanse of asphalt that could hold probably 200 cars. It was mostly empty on a Thursday morning. I had Pete dump the first load right in the middle of the lot, a huge pile of dirty snow that spread out about 20 feet in diameter. "Perfect," I said. "Next truck, different location." The second truck dumped in one of the common areas, a carefully landscaped section with decorative trees and a gazebo. The snow pile was placed right on the walkway leading to the gazebo. By the third truck, someone had noticed what was happening. A car pulled up near the clubhouse parking lot, and an elderly man got out, staring at the snow pile with confusion. He pulled out his phone, presumably calling someone. By the fourth truck, 2 police cars arrived. I had expected this. I walked over to the officers, a young guy and a middle-aged woman, as they got out of their vehicles. "Morning, officers," I said pleasantly. "I am Zachary Lawson. I own the agricultural property adjacent to this development." "Sir, we received reports that dump trucks are depositing snow throughout this neighborhood," the female officer said. She had a name tag that read Officer Chen. "That is correct," I said. "I am returning snow that was illegally dumped on my commercial farmland." "You cannot just dump snow in a residential neighborhood," the younger officer said. His name tag read Officer Morrison. "Actually, I am not dumping it randomly," I explained. "I am specifically returning it to the HOA common areas, which is where it originated." The Meadowbrook Heights HOA contracted snow removal services that trespassed on my property and illegally dumped approximately 1,000 cubic yards of snow on my commercial agricultural field. I am simply returning it to the source. Officer Chen frowned. "Do you have proof that the snow came from here?" I pulled out my tablet and showed her the drone footage, the photographs of the tire tracks, the GPS data, and the time stamps. I also sent a certified demand letter to the HOA 2 days ago, requesting immediate removal of the snow. They have not responded or taken any action. The officers examined my evidence. Officer Morrison looked impressed. "That is pretty thorough documentation." "I run a business," I said. "Documentation is important." "This is still going to cause a problem," Officer Chen said. "The HOA is going to file a complaint." "Let them," I said. "They committed illegal dumping first, trespassing, and destruction of commercial property. I have every right to return their property to them. I am being careful to only use HOA common areas, not private property. No individual homeowner is being affected." A silver BMW came screeching into the parking lot, and Patricia Hendricks jumped out, her face purple with rage. She was wearing yoga pants and a North Face jacket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Apparently, I had interrupted her morning routine. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" she screamed, storming toward me. "Returning your snow," I said calmly. "You cannot do this. This is vandalism. This is harassment. Officers, arrest this man." Officer Chen held up a hand. "Madam, calm down. We are assessing the situation." "There is nothing to assess. He is dumping snow all over our property." "Your contractors dumped snow all over his property first," Officer Morrison pointed out. "Do you have documentation of proper disposal permits for your snow removal?" Patricia's face went from purple to white. "We do not need permits. It is just snow." "Actually, you do need permits for relocating snow in bulk," Officer Chen said. "And you definitely cannot dump it on someone else's property without permission. That is illegal dumping, which is a criminal offense." "This is ridiculous," Patricia sputtered. "It is just snow. It melts." "It is snow mixed with road salt, gravel, automotive fluids, and trash," I said. "On my certified organic farmland, which means I now have to have the soil tested and possibly remediate before I can use it." We are talking tens of thousands of dollars in damages. Another dump truck rolled by, heading toward one of the retention ponds. Patricia watched in horror as it backed up to the edge and dumped another load. "Stop them!" she shrieked. "Madam, unless you can prove that this snow did not originate from your property and that you did not illegally dump it on his property first, there is not much we can do," Officer Chen said. "He is returning your property to you. But you cannot just dump snow wherever you want." "That is exactly what I told your contractors," I said. "Yet here we are." Patricia pulled out her phone and started frantically dialing. "I am calling our lawyers. You are going to pay for this." "I look forward to it," I said. "Please make sure they call my lawyer, Marcus Reynolds. I am sure they know him." The officers took statements from both of us, documented the scene with their own photos, and then left with a warning to both parties to try to resolve this civilly. Patricia stormed off, still screaming into her phone. Over the next 8 hours, Rick's trucks made 32 trips. We emptied my entire field of snow, distributing it evenly across Meadowbrook Heights common areas. The clubhouse parking lot had 5 massive piles. Each retention pond had snow pushed up along its edges. The gazebo area was surrounded by a wall of snow. The dog park was completely filled. The playground was inaccessible. Every decorative common area in the development had a generous helping of dirty, salt-crusted snow. By 3 in the afternoon, we were done. My field was clear, showing the dark soil underneath, ready for spring prep work to begin on schedule. Meadowbrook Heights, on the other hand, looked like a disaster zone. Rick came over to where I was standing on my field, surveying our work. "That was the most satisfying job I have done in 20 years of trucking," he said, grinning. "Thanks for the help," I said, shaking his hand. "Send me the invoice." "Already sent. And hey, if you ever need dump trucks for anything else, you call me first." I drove home to my small house on the other side of Madison, exhausted but satisfied. My phone had been ringing all afternoon with calls from numbers I did not recognize, so I had put it on silent. When I checked it that evening, I had 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and 46 emails. Most were from various HOA board members, residents, and even a few reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the story. The messages ranged from angry threats to amused congratulations. Apparently, not everyone in Meadowbrook Heights was a fan of Patricia Hendricks and her iron-fisted HOA management style. One email stood out. It was from a woman named Helen who lived in Meadowbrook Heights. "Mr. Lawson, I want you to know that many of us residents had no idea the HOA was dumping snow on your property. Patricia and the board make decisions without consulting us, and frankly, most of us are tired of her dictatorial management. What you did today was legendary. Half the neighborhood is laughing about it. The other half is calling for Patricia's resignation. Thank you for standing up to her." I went to bed that night feeling like maybe this had been worth it. The next morning, I woke up to find 3 news vans parked outside my house. Apparently, the story had gone viral on social media overnight. Someone had filmed the dump trucks in action and posted it to TikTok with the caption, "Farmer returns HOA's snow in the most epic way possible." The video had gotten over 2 million views. I made coffee and went outside to talk to the reporters. If this story was going public anyway, I might as well control the narrative. The interviews went well. I explained calmly and factually what had happened, showed them my documentation, and emphasized that I had only targeted HOA common areas, not private property. I came across as reasonable and wronged, which I was. The reporters ate it up. By noon, the story was on local news stations. By evening, it had been picked up by national outlets. My phone started ringing with interview requests from morning shows and news programs. The local newspaper ran a front-page story with the headline, "Farmer Fights Back Against HOA Snow Dumping." The court of public opinion was firmly on my side. Social media was full of people sharing their own HOA horror stories and celebrating what I had done. Memes started circulating. Someone made an animated GIF of a dump truck with the caption, "Return to sender." It was surreal. On Saturday, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered it. "Mr. Lawson, this is Donald Pierce. I am an attorney representing Meadowbrook Heights HOA. "Hello, Mr. Pierce. You can contact my attorney, Marcus Reynolds, with any legal matters." "I am aware of Mr. Reynolds," Pierce said, his voice smooth and professional. "However, I wanted to reach out to you directly to see if we could resolve this matter amicably before it escalates further." "I am listening." "The HOA is prepared to offer you $15,000 to cover the cost of snow removal and any minor damages to your field. In exchange, you would sign a release waiving any future claims against the HOA." I almost laughed. "Mr. Pierce, the dump trucks alone cost me $15,000. The soil testing and remediation will be another $20,000. The potential lost revenue if my organic certification is compromised could be over $100,000, and that is not even accounting for the principle of the matter. So no, I will not be accepting that offer." "What would you consider acceptable?" "Full remediation of my property by certified environmental contractors, documented soil testing proving no contamination, compensation for my time and expenses, and a public apology from the HOA board admitting wrongdoing. Plus, termination of whoever authorized the illegal dumping." Pierce was silent for a moment. "Those terms are not acceptable to my client. Then I guess we will see each other in court." "Mr. Lawson, you should know that the HOA is prepared to file criminal charges against you for illegal dumping, destruction of property, and creating a public hazard." "Go ahead," I said. "I have full documentation that I was returning the HOA's property to them after they illegally dumped it on my land. I made sure to only place snow on HOA common property, not private property, and every legal expert I have talked to agrees that I was within my rights. Meanwhile, the HOA committed criminal trespass, illegal dumping, and destruction of commercial property. So please file your charges. I would love to see how that plays out in front of a jury." Pierce sighed. "This does not need to be adversarial. Your client made it adversarial when they dumped snow on my farmland and then refused to remove it. I will talk to them again when they are ready to negotiate seriously. Until then, all communication goes through my attorney." I hung up and immediately called Marcus to brief him on the conversation. "They are testing you," Marcus said. "That lowball offer was to see if you would fold. The fact that you did not means they will come back with something better, or they will try to intimidate you with legal action." "I am not folding," I said firmly. "Good, because I did some research and you are absolutely in the right here. They have no legal leg to stand on. The problem is, HOAs have deep pockets and can drag this out for years." "Let them try," I said. "I am not backing down." The following week was chaos. The HOA filed a civil lawsuit against me for $15,000 in damages, claiming I had created a public hazard and destroyed their common areas. In response, Marcus filed a countersuit for $120,000, plus legal fees, detailing the HOA's illegal dumping, trespassing, and destruction of my commercial property. The local news covered every development. Public opinion remained overwhelmingly on my side. A reporter interviewed several Meadowbrook Heights residents, and the results were enlightening. An elderly man named George said. I had no idea the board was doing this. If I had known, I would have voted against it. We pay HOA fees to maintain our community, not to dump our problems on our neighbors. A young mother named Jennifer said, Patricia Hendricks has been a nightmare as HOA president. She fines people for having the wrong color mailbox or parking in their own driveway. I think it is time for new leadership. Even some board members started to distance themselves from Patricia. One of them, a man named Robert, resigned publicly, stating that he had not been informed of the snow dumping decision and did not support the board's actions. The pressure on Patricia was mounting. Meanwhile, I had soil samples tested from multiple locations in my field. The results came back showing elevated levels of sodium chloride road salt, petroleum residues, and various heavy metals. My organic certification was now in jeopardy, exactly as I had feared. I forwarded the results to Marcus, who immediately amended our lawsuit to include loss of organic certification and future revenue. 10 days after I had returned the snow, I received another call from Donald Pierce. Mr. Lawson, my client would like to extend a revised settlement offer. I am listening. The HOA will pay for professional soil remediation by a certified environmental contractor of your choosing, cover all soil testing costs, and provide $50,000 in compensation for your time, expenses, and lost revenue. In exchange, you drop your lawsuit and sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the matter. No NDA, I said immediately. Everything else is negotiable, but I will not sign an NDA. This is a matter of public record, and I will not let the HOA sweep it under the rug. The NDA is non-negotiable from my client's perspective. Then, we are at an impasse. Tell your client that if they want to settle, the offer needs to include full transparency, a public apology, and accountability for whoever made the decision to dump snow on my property. Otherwise, I will see them in court, and I will make sure every detail of this case is public record. Pierce ended the call without another word. 2 days later, there was an emergency meeting of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA board. According to Helen, my email correspondent from inside the development, over 100 residents showed up to demand answers. The meeting was held in the clubhouse, and from what I heard, it was explosive. Patricia tried to maintain control, but the residents were not having it. They demanded to know who had authorized the illegal dumping, why the board had not consulted the membership, and how much money was being spent on lawyers to defend an indefensible position. One resident, a retired attorney named Martin, stood up and read from the HOA bylaws, pointing out that major decisions affecting the community were supposed to be put to a vote. Spending tens of thousands on snow removal that involved illegal dumping on neighboring property definitely qualified as a major decision. When Patricia tried to argue that she had the authority to make operational decisions without a vote, Martin shot her down, citing specific sections of the bylaws and Wisconsin HOA law. The mood in the room turned hostile. By the end of the meeting, a petition had been started to remove Patricia from the board. Within 48 hours, it had signatures from over 60% of the homeowners. Helen sent me updates throughout the process. People are furious, she wrote. Not at you, at Patricia. Everyone knows she overstepped, and now she is costing us money trying to defend her mistake. There is going to be a recall vote. The recall election happened 3 weeks after I had returned the snow. Patricia Hendricks was removed from the HOA board by a vote of 212 to 47. It was not even close. The new board president was Martin, the retired attorney. His first action was to call me directly. Mr. Lawson, this is Martin Fletcher, the new president of Meadowbrook Heights HOA Board. I want to start by apologizing for what happened. The previous board's actions were unconscionable, and I want to make this right. I appreciate that, I said, surprised by his directness. I have reviewed your demands, and I think they are reasonable. We will pay for full soil remediation by a certified contractor. We will cover all testing costs, both initial and follow-up. We will compensate you $75,000 for your time, expenses, and lost revenue. And I will personally issue a public apology on behalf of the HOA, taking full responsibility for our actions. What about accountability? I asked. Who made the decision to dump the snow on my property? Martin sighed. Patricia made that decision unilaterally. She hired the snow removal contractor directly without board approval and told them to dump the snow on your field to save money. The contractor assumed she had legal permission. When the board found out, she told us you had agreed to it, which was obviously a lie. Several board members, including myself, were completely in the dark until you showed up with dump trucks. Will there be legal consequences for her? We are cooperating with the county prosecutor's office, Martin said. They are investigating whether to file charges for illegal dumping and fraud. That is out of my hands, but I can tell you that the HOA will not be protecting her. Good, I said. Send the settlement terms to my attorney. If they match what you just said, I will accept. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. And again, I am deeply sorry for what you went through. The settlement was finalized a week later. The HOA paid for an environmental remediation company to come out and treat my soil. They ran extensive tests to ensure no lasting contamination. My organic certification was preserved. The $75,000 payment more than covered my expenses and lost time. Martin issued a public statement that was printed in the local newspaper and posted on the HOA website. The Meadowbrook Heights HOA takes full responsibility for the illegal dumping of snow on Mr. Zachary Lawson's commercial agricultural property. This action was undertaken without proper authorization, without legal permits, and in complete disregard for our neighbors' rights and livelihood. We deeply regret the harm caused and have taken steps to ensure such misconduct never happens again. We have settled with Mr. Lawson and covered all remediation costs. Additionally, we have implemented new oversight procedures to prevent any board member from making unilateral decisions that affect our community or our neighbors. The story had one more chapter, though. 2 months after the settlement, I received a call from the county prosecutor's office. An assistant district attorney named Sarah wanted to meet with me about pressing charges against Patricia Hendricks. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Madison. Sarah was in her early 30s, sharp-eyed and serious. Mr. Lawson, we have been investigating the illegal dumping on your property, she said. Based on the evidence, we believe we have grounds to charge Patricia Hendricks with illegal dumping, criminal trespass, and fraud. Fraud? I asked. She lied to multiple parties about having permission to dump on your land. She lied to the contractor, telling them you had agreed. She lied to her own board members, telling them the same thing. And she lied in official HOA documents, claiming the snow removal was handled according to proper procedures. That is fraud. What would the consequences be? Illegal dumping is a misdemeanor, potentially up to 90 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. Criminal trespass is similar. Fraud is more serious, potentially a year in jail and a $10,000 fine. Realistically, if she is convicted, she would probably get probation, community service, and fines. But it would be on her record. What do you need from me? Your testimony and your permission to proceed. Technically, I can file charges without your input, but I want to make sure you are comfortable with it. This will be public, it will be time-consuming, and Patricia's lawyers will attack your credibility." I thought about Patricia's smug face when she told me her lawyers would bury me. I thought about her dismissing my livelihood as just an empty field. I thought about how she had lied to everyone, including her own community, to cover her mistake. "File the charges," I said. The case went to court 4 months later. It was a bench trial, just the judge, no jury. Patricia showed up with her expensive lawyers, wearing a conservative navy suit and trying to look sympathetic. I testified for 2 hours, walking through everything that had happened. My documentation was entered into evidence. Photos, videos, drone footage, GPS data, timestamps, the demand letter, everything. The contractor who had actually moved the snow testified that Patricia had told him I had agreed to accept the snow, and that he had no reason to doubt her. He had never spoken to me directly, trusting the HOA president's word. Former board members testified that Patricia had lied to them about having permission. Martin testified about finding discrepancies in the HOA records after taking over as president. Patricia's defense was that it had all been a misunderstanding, that she had genuinely believed I would not mind, that the contractor had acted without her full knowledge. Her lawyers tried to paint her as a well-meaning community volunteer who had made a mistake. The judge was not buying it. Judge Kathleen Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, listened to all the testimony, reviewed all the evidence, and delivered her verdict. "Miss Hendricks, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. You deliberately and knowingly authorized the dumping of snow on Mr. Lawson's property without his permission. When confronted, you lied to multiple parties about having authorization. You misused your position as HOA president to commit acts that were illegal and harmful to your neighbor. This was not a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated decision to save money at someone else's expense, followed by a cover-up when you were caught." Patricia's face was pale. "I find you guilty of illegal dumping, criminal trespass, and fraud. I am sentencing you to 6 months in county jail, suspended pending 1 year of probation. You will perform 200 hours of community service. You will pay fines totaling $15,000. And you are permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in the state of Wisconsin. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Patricia said quietly, her voice shaking. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Patricia's lawyers hustled her away quickly, but I stopped to answer questions. "Mr. Lawson, how do you feel about the verdict?" "I feel vindicated," I said. This was never about revenge. It was about accountability. Nobody should be able to destroy someone else's property and livelihood without consequences, no matter what position they hold. What would you say to other people dealing with difficult HOAs? Document everything. Know your rights. Do not be afraid to stand up for yourself. And remember, HOAs are supposed to serve their communities, not rule them like dictators. The story finally died down after that. Local news moved on to other things. Social media found new controversies to obsess over. Life returned to normal. My spring planting went ahead on schedule. The soil remediation had actually improved some areas of my field, and I had a banner crop that year. The restaurant contracts were fulfilled, the farmers' markets were supplied, and my business thrived. I still live in Wisconsin, still farm the same land. Meadowbrook Heights has been a good neighbor since Martin took over the board. They actually consulted with me when planning their snow removal for the following winter, making sure their contractors knew exactly where the property lines were. I ran into Martin at the hardware store one day about a year after everything had settled. "How is the farm going?" he asked. Great, I said. Best year I've had in a while. Good. And I want you to know we implemented a lot of changes at the HOA. We put limits on board authority, require membership votes for major decisions, and have regular audits. What happened with Patricia was a wake-up call for a lot of people. That is good to hear, I said. How is the community doing? Better, Martin said. Turns out when you treat people with respect and run things transparently, everyone is happier. Who knew? He grinned. I laughed. Revolutionary concept. We parted on good terms, and I drove home thinking about how strange the whole experience had been. It had started with snow dumped on my field and ended with legal battles, viral videos, and a convicted former HOA president. But in the end, it had been worth it. That evening, I got an email from Helen. Mr. Lawson, I wanted to let you know that the HOA just voted to donate $10,000 to local agricultural education programs in your honor. Martin proposed it, and it passed unanimously. We wanted to do something positive to make up for what Patricia did. Hope that is okay with you. I wrote back immediately. That is more than okay. That is wonderful. Thank you. Sometimes standing up for yourself does more than just solve your own problem. Sometimes it changes things for other people too. The residents of Meadowbrook Heights had learned that their HOA should serve them, not the other way around. They had learned to question authority and demand transparency. And they had learned that good neighbors respect each other's property and livelihoods. As for me, I learned that documentation is everything, that public opinion matters, and that sometimes the best response to someone dumping their problems on you is to return them, one dump truck at a time. The next winter came around, and I watched with amusement as Meadowbrook Heights Snow Removal Company carefully, meticulously, made sure every single snowflake went to the county-designated dump sites. It cost them more money, but nobody complained. Martin had explained to the membership exactly why proper disposal was important, and they had voted to increase HOA fees slightly to cover the cost. It is worth it to do things right, he had told them, and to be good neighbors. My phone still occasionally rang with interview requests from people writing articles about HOA abuses of power, or from other property owners dealing with similar situations. I always took the time to talk to them, to share my story and offer advice. Document everything, I would tell them. Get GPS coordinates, timestamps, photos, videos. Make sure you have evidence that will hold up in court. And do not be afraid to get creative in fighting back, as long as you stay on the right side of the law. One guy called me from Colorado, where his HOA had cut down 3 mature trees on his property without permission, because they obstructed the view from the clubhouse. I walked him through exactly how to document the damage, file police reports, and get his own arborist assessment of the value of the trees. Last I heard, he had settled with the HOA for $150,000. Another woman from Florida contacted me after her HOA tried to fine her for having solar panels on her roof, even though Florida has a solar rights law that explicitly protects homeowners. I connected her with my lawyer, Marcus, who had recently started specializing in HOA disputes. He helped her not only get the fines reversed, but also get the HOA to change their architectural guidelines to comply with state law. My little stand against Patricia Hendricks and the Meadowbrook Heights HOA had created ripples that spread far beyond my 40-acre field in Wisconsin. People were standing up to abusive HOAs across the country, empowered by the knowledge that they did not have to just take it. Marcus called me one day, laughing. You know, you have basically given me a whole new practice area, right? I am getting calls every week from people dealing with nightmare HOAs. I have had to hire 2 more attorneys just to handle the caseload. Sorry, I said, not sounding sorry at all. Do not be sorry. This is great. These HOAs have been getting away with this stuff for years because people did not know how to fight back. You changed that. You showed people it is possible to win. I felt a strange sense of pride at that. I had not set out to become some kind of HOA fighting folk hero. I had just wanted my field clear so I could plant my crops. But if my experience helped other people stand up for their rights, that was a good thing. The anniversary of the snow dumping incident came and went. I marked it by posting a photo on social media. My field, lush and green, full of healthy vegetable plants. The caption read, "1 year ago, this field was covered in 15 feet of illegally dumped snow. Today, it is producing food for our community. Stand up for your rights. Document everything. Do not let anyone tell you that their convenience is more important than your livelihood." The post got 50,000 likes and was shared thousands of times. The comments were full of people sharing their own HOA horror stories and thanking me for speaking out. I also got a handwritten letter in the mail from Patricia Hendricks. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single page, written in neat cursive. "Mr. Lawson, I am writing to apologize for my actions. I have spent the last year in therapy and community service, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who would do what I did to you. I was so focused on saving money and maintaining control that I lost sight of basic decency and respect. What I did was wrong. It hurt you, it hurt my community, and it hurt my own family. My husband left me. My adult children will not speak to me. I lost my position, my reputation, and very nearly my freedom. I deserve all of it. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry, truly sorry, for what I put you through. I hope you can forgive me someday, though I understand if you cannot. Sincerely, Patricia Hendricks." I read the letter twice, trying to gauge its sincerity. It was hard to tell. People say a lot of things when they are facing consequences. But there was something in the tone, a resignation and genuine regret, that made me think maybe she really had learned something. I did not write back. I did not need to forgive her or maintain any kind of relationship. But I folded the letter and put it in my files, a reminder that people can change, even if the cost is high. Life moved on. My farm continued to thrive. I expanded operations, leasing another 60 acres and bringing on 2 full-time employees. The publicity from the HOA incident had actually been good for business. People liked the story of a small farmer standing up to bullies, and they supported my operation with their dollars. I started selling at 3 more farmers markets and added 2 more restaurant clients. I was making more money than I ever had. The $75,000 settlement had been invested back into the business, buying new equipment and improving irrigation systems. Rick, the trucking company owner who had helped me return the snow, became a regular contractor for me. He hauled compost, delivered supplies, and transported produce. We became friends, bonding over beers and stories about the dump truck operation that had made us both semi-famous. "I still get people asking me about it," Rick said one evening at a local bar. "Just last week, some guy wanted to hire me to move his neighbor's cars off his lawn after a party. I had to explain that what we did was legal because you were returning property that had been illegally dumped on your land. You cannot just hire dump trucks to mess with people." "Although it would be funny," I admitted. "Very funny," Rick agreed, "but also very illegal." We laughed, and I thought about how this whole experience had connected me with people I never would have met otherwise. Martin, the new HOA president who had actually been decent and reasonable. Helen, the resident who had kept me informed and become a friend. Marcus, my lawyer who had found a new calling fighting for people against abusive HOAs. Rick, who shared my sense of justice and willingness to stand up for what was right. Even Sarah, the prosecutor who had taken on Patricia's case, stayed in touch. She had gone on to prosecute several more cases involving HOA board members abusing their authority. Apparently, once you start looking, the problems are everywhere. HOAs are supposed to maintain property values and provide services, Sarah told me over coffee one day. But too often they become power trips for people who like controlling their neighbors. We need more oversight and accountability. Maybe there should be a law, I suggested. Something that limits HOA authority and protects homeowners. There are some laws, Sarah said, but they are not strong enough and they are not enforced enough. It would take a real push to change things at the legislative level. I thought about that. Maybe that was the next step. I was not a politician, and I had no interest in becoming one. But I knew people now, people with influence and platforms. Maybe together we could push for real reform. I reached out to some of the journalists who had covered my story. I talked to Marcus about what legal changes would be most effective. I connected with advocates who had been working on HOA reform for years. And slowly, a plan started to form. We drafted model legislation that would require HOA boards to have more transparency, would mandate member votes for major expenditures, would create an oversight process for complaints, and would impose real penalties for board members who abused their authority. Then we started shopping it to state legislators. It was slow work, much slower than moving snow with dump trucks. But it was important work, and to my surprise, we started getting traction. A state representative from Milwaukee took an interest. Then a state senator from Green Bay joined the effort. Within 6 months, we had a bill in committee. The HOA industry lobby fought us, of course. They argued that the regulations would be burdensome and expensive. They claimed that HOAs were self-regulating and did not need government interference. They trotted out sympathetic board members who talked about how hard they worked as volunteers. But we had something they did not: stories. Real stories from real people about HOA abuses. We had the homeowner who had been fined $10,000 for painting her front door the wrong shade of approved beige. We had the veteran who had been threatened with foreclosure for flying an American flag that was 6 inches larger than the HOA allowed. We had the family who had been denied permission to build a wheelchair ramp for their disabled daughter. And we had my story, the farmer whose livelihood had nearly been destroyed because an HOA president decided to dump her problems on him. The bill passed in committee. It went to the floor. It was debated, amended, debated again. And finally, after 8 months of work, it passed both houses of the Wisconsin legislature. The governor signed it into law on a sunny day in May. I was there at the signing ceremony, along with Marcus, Sarah, Martin, and about a dozen other people who had been affected by HOA abuses. This law will not solve every problem, the governor said in her speech. But it will give homeowners more protection, more voice, and more recourse when their HOAs overstep. It is a good step forward. I shook her hand after the ceremony, feeling oddly emotional. 2 years ago, I had just been a farmer trying to make a living. Now I was standing in the state capitol, having helped pass a law that would protect thousands of people. "Thank you for not giving up," the governor said to me. "Your story inspired a lot of people." "I just wanted my field back," I said, smiling. "Everything else kind of happened." "That is usually how it works," she said. "Someone stands up, and other people realize they can stand up too." I drove back to my farm that evening, watching the sun set over my fields. The spring planting was well underway. The soil was healthy and productive. The crops were thriving. And somewhere in Madison, a new law was being prepared for implementation. A law that would make it a little harder for people like Patricia Hendricks to abuse their power. It had been a long, strange journey from that February morning when I had woken up to find a mountain of snow on my field. But I would not change any of it. Well, maybe I would have preferred to skip the part where my property was illegally dumped on. But everything after that, the fight, the vindication, the changes that had come from it, all of that had been worth it. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen. Just saw the news about the HOA reform law. Congratulations. You have come a long way from dump trucks full of snow, I texted back. We all came a long way, could not have done it without all of you. And that was the truth. Standing up to Patricia and the HOA board had been my decision, but everything that came after had been a group effort. People supporting each other, sharing information, fighting together for something better. I walked out into my field, the dirt soft under my boots, and looked at the neat rows of growing plants. This was what it was all about. Not revenge, not even justice, really. It was about being able to do your work, live your life, and not have someone else destroy it because they did not care or did not think you mattered. Everyone deserves that basic respect. Everyone deserves to have their property and their livelihood protected. And if an HOA or anyone else tries to take that away, you have to stand up and fight back. The Meadowbrook Heights development was visible from my field, the houses neat and orderly in their curved streets. Light glowed in windows as people came home from work, made dinner, lived their lives. It was a good community now, run by people who cared about doing things right. Patricia's legacy was not the snow she had dumped or the chaos she had caused. Her legacy was the reform that had come after, the laws that would protect others from people like her. I hope she had really changed, really learned something from what had happened. But whether she had or not, the world had changed. And that was what mattered. I went inside, made dinner, and settled in for a quiet evening. Tomorrow I would be back in the fields doing the work I loved. And if anyone ever tried to dump their problems on me again, well, I had a trucking company on speed dial. But I did not think that would be necessary. Word had gotten around. People knew I was not someone who would just accept being pushed around. And more importantly, the systems were changing. The laws were stronger. The accountability was real. It was a good feeling, knowing that my fight had made a difference not just for me, but for thousands of other people. As I fell asleep that night, I thought about all the homeowners who would benefit from the new law, all the HOA board members who would think twice before abusing their authority, all the communities that would be a little bit better because someone had finally said enough is enough. Sometimes you do not set out to change the world. Sometimes you just set out to clear snow off your field. But if you do it the right way, with documentation and determination and a willingness to stand up for what is right, you might end up changing more than you ever expected. And that is exactly what happened to me. The farmer who fought back against an HOA, one dump truck load of snow at a time.